Okay, for this lesson, the plan is for us to actually cycle out the character into the scene and then have the background going backwards. In other words, what we intend to do is to have a static camera with this particular frame as we see, and then with the character moving into the frame and cycling out on the spot while the background shifts opposite way, indicating that the camera is actually panning across with the character or trucking across with the character. Right. For that purpose, what I have done is brought in the background drawing, attached it to a peg, and I've also pegged out the character itself. Now, bringing in the background, which is really rough, and in terms of consideration, you look at that line, which is much thicker than the character itself. It's all wrong, but it's only an exercise. But there are two ways to bring in the background into the scene. One of them is by bringing it in through sort of importing it into the layer itself and vectorizing, as this is the case. The other way is also to go to File and import file and look for the file and bring that in. The problem with the other way is that it will not vectorize, so what you'll have to do is sort of resize and do things in a slightly different way. This seems to work well for us because it keeps the same sort of relative quality to it. The other thing that I had to do when I brought in the background drawing was to actually increase the exposure for that right across the entire length of the film. So when you bring something in, as you know, it only is exposed for the one frame, but what I did here was to expose it right across the entire frame here, right to the end. So we had that image statically placed on the scene for the entire length of the sequence. Right, let's have a look at the actual animation on this, because what I've also gone and done is sort of animate the character moving into the shot, like so, and from this point onwards she'll be just cycling on the spot. This is the point where we'll need to sort of have the camera moving forward while this background moving backwards, indicating that there's a tracking going on here. Now, ideally, what you want to do is to start that track one or two frames before you come to the end, and not necessarily right on the top, because a certain amount of blending is necessary, and I think that would also lend itself to be much more natural in terms of this is what happens with cameras anyway. So I'm just going to, while this is the cycle, the transition of the character moving to the shot ends at frame 50, what I want to do now is sort of have it sort of have the scene at frame 47. So about 3 or 4 frames, maybe even 46. 3 or 4 frames before the end of the cycle, before the end of the translation to do that. So going to the peg on the background peg. What I'll do at this stage is make sure that I insert a keyframe by having an add keyframe to it, so we know that that's static right to that point there, and then from that point onwards, if we track all the way to the last frame, which is right here, it becomes a simple exercise of moving the camera to kind of we hit the last frame there. So if I replay this now, hopefully character comes in and the frame works in this way. So that what we have done here now is to actually look at using pegs to aid us in terms of our shot composition and in our cinematography and staging of things. And it's as simple as that. We'll be looking at other stuff a little bit later in terms of using pegs for variety of different things. One of the other things that pegs are often used for is for having a cutout animation where you attach pegs and have a huge hierarchy down here, which aids you to be able to do cutout animation. And we'll be looking at that at some time later.